All right, welcome to part 2. We're continuing off with ideas from part 1, so make sure to watch it. I'll have it linked below.
And you need something to trade with.
So having something to trade with was kind of described in the last example, but I want to go ahead and I want to do the math for you to show you just how much you would have to trade in comparison to just renting and saving alone. Now we'll call this axis your net wealth, and we'll look at it from the perspective of today, going on for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So kind of piggybacking off of the studio example, we'll say that today your rent starts with $2,000, and in 5 years it'll be $2,500, in 10 years it'll be $3,000, at 15 it'll be $3,500, and in 20 years it'll be $4,000. Okay, so now if you pay $2,000 per month for the next 5 years, you would have spent $120,000. Now from 5 to 10 years, if you spend $2,500 on rent, that's $150,000 added to the $120,000 that you already spent, and that puts you at $270,000. Now from 10 to 15 years, if you're going to spend $3,000,
You probably get the point with the math, so I'll zoom through it, but essentially you end up spending $660,000 over 20 years, and that's if you stay in a studio apartment.
so buying a studio condo for $300,000 with 5% down at a 7% interest rate is going to give you about $2,500 per month. And that'll cost you up front with your down payment about $15,000. However, it's not like you spent that $15,000 and will never get it back again. That $15,000 goes straight into your equity. Now your monthly mortgage goes towards several different things. Some of that will be spent on taxes and fees, interest, private mortgage insurance if you paid under 20% for your down payment, but part of it will go to your principal, and that principal payment goes towards your equity.
Now, I'm about to use this graph in this example, so I'll take a second to explain it. This is from mortgagecalculator.org, and I absolutely love them. I'll have them linked below so that you can calculate your own mortgage needs. But I am creating an app that will show you really similar information, and it'll go even further to tell you what you can afford, when you'd be able to afford a home, and even simulate market crashes and apply it to your personal home investment so you can get an idea of how to prepare yourself. So when it launches, I'll link it below, so make sure to check just in case it's already out. But back to this graph from Mortgage Calculator, this basically shows you all of your mortgage payments added up for each year, and then it breaks it down to show you what that mortgage was spent on. As you can see, for the first half of your loan, most of your mortgage payments go towards interest. And that's because the bank is going to prioritize making their money off of you first. But this is why a lot of people say to pay a little bit extra down on your home when you can, because that extra money will go straight towards your principal so that you can pay off your home faster and pay less of that interest. But with that, let's calculate your equity.
So let's see. Only about $1,400 will have gone towards your principal. Oh, and it's also so little because we're also starting halfway through the year because it's July. But let's do the math for the next 5 years. So in 5 years, you would have built up about $15,000 in equity. So let's add that, which will put you at about $30,000. Over those next 5 years,
All right, now you saw how I did it for the first 5 years. I'm going to continue doing that for the upcoming 5-year increments, but I'll skip showing it just so we're not flashing between graphs so quickly.
about $23,000. So let's add that to the $30,000. You'd be at about $52,000. Forgive my lines. After that, you'd be at $32,000. Now let's add that to the $52,000, and you'd be at $84,000 in equity now. Now notice how every year the amount that goes towards your equity increases. Now, over that amount of time, about $46,000. So let's add that to the $84,000, and you'd be at $130,000 just from paying off your loan. Now, keep in mind, your payment this entire time is $2,500. Now, we're going to calculate how much you would have saved, and this will be more of an opportunity cost. But by renting, eventually you are missing out on the opportunity to save a lot more because your monthly payment was frozen instead of continually increasing. So at this point, at 5 years, your mortgage that was previously expensive is now the same price as market rent. So no savings as of the 10-year mark. Now after 10 years, you move and you're paying $3,000, which is $500 over what your mortgage would be. So you'd be saving $500 per month times 12 over 5 years. That's $30,000. So during this time period, you're saving $30,000 that would have gone to rent. Now let's add that to your $84,000. And that puts you at $114,000. And then for the next 5 years after that, if you were paying market price rent, it would be $1,000 over what your current mortgage would have been. So you'd be saving $1,000 per month for 5 years, which is at $60,000. So let's add that to your $114,000 in equity and opportunity to save and that puts you at $174,000. So as you can see, over time, it's much easier for people to save if their mortgage stays the same. It would be up to you to save that amount, but that's how much less you have to spend. So at this point, we've calculated how much equity you would have simply from paying off your home, how much more money you'd have the opportunity to save if you owned your home and it stayed the same price. So now let's look at appreciation over the span of 20 years. So in 1990, you can get the median home for $120,000 basically. Now 20 years later, even at the bottom of a market crash, your home has appreciated by $100,000. So let's add that. After that, you would be positive by $274,000 in comparison to being negative by $660,000 from renting.
Now, before I get hecklers in the comments, please remember that you are still paying $2,500 per month for 20 years. So although you're up by $274,000, you still would have spent at least $600,000 on your mortgage. And with the cost of home maintenance, you likely would have spent at least $60,000, if not more. But even if you do end up spending a little bit more by owning a home, you can clearly see how much you're getting back by owning your home in comparison to getting nothing back from renting.
Now this is looking at it from the long-term perspective. So if you have to spend money on rent or a mortgage, you're probably better off here owning instead of just renting. And it's not even like you have to stay in this studio apartment to reap these benefits. What both Barb and I are about to describe is how to trade up your home, because it's simply starting this homeowning process that gets your foot in the door for these benefits. So with that, let's get on to the good stuff.
That you get a quick gain on.
So just from our previous example with the appreciation, you can see that if you wait for the market in the long run, your property will most likely increase in value just because the market is always increasing. So what Barb is talking about is kind of predicting what market is going to grow so that you can get a property at below market value. And as the area develops really quickly, it'll become more desirable and then you can sell it for much more than what you bought it for pretty quickly. So a really great example of this for me in my locality is Temecula.
This is not the actual timeline or home values, but here's a visual of what it might hypothetically look like.
It's sandwiched right between Orange County and San Diego, which are two major Southern California hubs, and it's got some attractions from the small wine country that it has out there, and people weren't very familiar with it before because it was pretty out of the way. So maybe 10, 15 years back, it didn't really have much going on out there other than the wineries. So as people passed through Temecula going from Orange County to San Diego, it grew more in popularity, and Temecula began to develop more, and more houses started being built. The houses were pretty cheap early in the day, maybe at $200,000, but as Orange County and San Diego became really expensive, Temecula became an appealing option. So what happened? More people started moving there, Temecula began to develop more, and in a short few years, home prices began to double.
So let's compare real quick. Just from looking at the median US house prices, you can see that there's a reasonable increase in that stable local market. But if you compare it to the example of Temecula, which is a fast-paced growing market where you were able to get your foot in the door really early, you can see that there's a lot more appreciation.
And that's what Barb's talking about doing, so that your appreciation builds much faster than your equity and rent savings obviously will. Because with building equity and savings, that is very much a long-term game versus appreciation if you pick the right place and have good timing. And for the most part, timing doesn't matter too much because it's always increasing and there are very few drops. But I will get to crashes in my next video. Now back to Barb.
Because you have a trading card. Then you trade in for a one bedroom. And maybe you trade that one bedroom for two bedrooms. Then you get that big house on the hill.
So now from all the other examples we've done together, we kind of have an understanding of equity and appreciation and how great it is. But now I'm going to play a short clip of me doing some math from a little while ago that shows you how to actually use that appreciation and equity to trade up like how Barb is describing. So let's go ahead and play that now.
For context, I originally created this as a standalone post. It's going to go over paying off your home, trading up, and trading down. For relevance, Barb is specifically talking about trading up, but all three of these topics are really important to understanding how to make the most of your home investment.
The simplest thing you can do is pay off your home. Let's say you get a $300,000 home with a 30-year mortgage at 30 years old and the monthly payment is $2,000 a month. With each monthly payment, you own a little more of your home. So by the time you're 60, you'll own your home fully and have no more payments to make to the bank, making it easy to retire with your biggest monthly expense gone. In scenario 2, let's say with the same home at 45 years old, you have more kids and they need their own space, so you want to trade up your home. Well, you've paid off half your mortgage.
Let's pause for a small detail. You likely won't have half your mortgage paid off at the halfway point of your 30-year mortgage. Because if you remember from earlier, the bank will charge you more in interest up front. I kept the numbers and proportions really clean for this example, just so that people can get the concept much easier. But if you want to check how much of your principal would have been paid off, that's what I calculated earlier in a previous example using mortgagecalculator.com.
giving you $150,000 in equity, and your property appreciated in value and you were able to sell it for $400,000, meaning you made $100,000 in profit. Now you found the perfect $550,000 home and used your equity and appreciation as a down payment for $250,000. Guess how much you need from the bank? You need a $300,000 loan, the same as your original home. So if you get the same rate, you now have a 30-year mortgage at the same $2,000 monthly payment as your smaller home. But just note that your mortgage clock has reset and you'll be 75 by the time you pay off this home, which brings us to scenario 3, trading down. Let's say at 65 years old, you're an empty nester and you no longer need the extra space, so you want a smaller home. Will you have the value of the original down payment in your home along with the new equity added from paying off 2/3 of your current mortgage? And your home appreciated and you were able to sell it for $750,000. That leaves you with $650,000 cash to buy your smaller $400,000 home, and you still have $250,000 left from your $650,000 profit.
So kind of the key thing with that is you're able to get a better and better home while still paying the same or much lower monthly payment, making that big house on the hill affordable even with an average salary. And if you do it Barb's way with the short game and you're really utilizing that ability to appreciate your property, you can get there much, much quicker, like she said. But this all really depends on the market continuing to increase in the long run, which it does. But we all know about the infamous 2008, which I'll be getting to in this video. But just make sure to like, comment, and subscribe before it starts, and ask all your questions down below, and I'll be waiting there in the comments.